It's just a complete different driving experience, and having the dials right in front of you in your direct eye line instead of through the steering wheel. In this day and age, Peugeot rarely make good cars that break headlines. An exception to this is obviously the Peugeot 205 GTI, which was one of the greatest cars ever made. And speaking of which, I must admit this facelifted Mark II Peugeot 308 might also be following the same path. And so, since it's reaching the end of its life cycle, what better way to review it and check what it offers? But first off though, I want to give a big shout out to the owner of this car, Billy, for letting me review it. Like usual, I will leave his handles in the description box below. If you do have any questions on long-term 308 ownership, make sure to message him and give him a follow as well. Back to the review, and starting things off, I want to talk about the Peugeot key fob first, because just look at it. It's got such an eccentric design for a Peugeot key fob, and I love it. Additionally, every time you lock the car, the mirrors fold in, and vice versa when you unlock the car. I think that's a great feature in a car like this. As for the model variant in front of me, it's the 2016 308 GT line with the 1.2 litre petrol engine that's currently pushing 130 brake horsepower and 170 pound-foot of torque, all to the front wheels. You can also get this car in a 1.6 litre and 2 litre engine, with the top of the range model being the GTI variant with 270 brake horsepower. Moving on to the design, it's a massive improvement over its predecessor. I like the fact that it's pretty tidy, it's not extra, there's not much aggression, and in this black colour it looks rather pleasant. There are some interesting exterior features. For example, this car comes with LED fog lights and LED puddle lights, which can't be found in other cars in this price bracket of £10,000. In terms of the rear seats, well, a lot of people have said that there's barely any space in the back of it and that there's limited knee room, but I'm 5'11" and I'm not really having any issues with leg room and headroom either. But I tell you what is cool though, in the GT line you get a little ski hatch, but I'm not too sure it's a feature that gets used very often in this car. Next up, we move over to the front half of the interior, and I've got to say it's such a big old change from the boring old previous generation. I like how high class this interior is, yet so unclustered. I could probably count the number of buttons on my hands alone. That being said, everything is controlled through this 9.7-inch infotainment system, which leads me on to my first issue, and that is how to control the climate controls in this car. Let's just say it's a nice hot day in the UK, you get in your car and you want to reduce the temperature. Well, you have to click this minus button 10 odd times to get to the temperature you want, and they are only in 0.5 increments. It is slightly annoying. If you want to control both yours and your passenger's air conditioning, you have to click onto this secondary screen and click on mono. And when you raise or lower the temperature on your side, it should also change on your passenger side. However, if the passenger changes the temperature on their side, it completely disables the operation. Once again, another annoying feature, but what can you do? On one of the 7 different screens in the Peugeot 308, it gives you the option to check the parameters of the car, and it gives you 2 options of stopwatches. I think it's kind of misleading as to what these are, because I initially thought it was an actual stopwatch, but it's not. It gives you trip information. Right, now let's go for a drive in the Peugeot 308, and this is actually my first ever drive. I am a big fan of this car. It was a tough choice between the Honda Civic and Leon when I came to buy my first car. I think there's just something about the 308 that just makes it stand out against the others. I've got to speak about this, and it's the steering wheel being so small, and it's just a complete different driving experience, and having the dials right in front of you in your direct eye line instead of through the steering wheel. So I've driven it like, I would say 10 odd, 20 odd seconds, and I'm getting used to it. I would say it's a bit strange having the rev counter rise the opposite direction. It's a bit like an Aston Martin. But it's not all good news in the Peugeot 308. There are a few niggles. So for example, trying to control the climate controls on the go is a bit of a hassle. Secondly, the fuse box in this car is on the left hand side, meaning the glove box is really tiny. You can't even fit a service book in there. And finally, I am not much of a fan of these alloy wheels. I think they have a diamond cut finish on them, not too sure, but if they came as a fully black from factory, it would just be that tiny bit better. This car only has 3 cylinders and it has the 1.2 litre PureTech engine as mentioned, but you wouldn't really think it has 3 cylinders. It actually is quite punchy when you put it into the sport mode gearbox. The performance version of this car is really good, the 308 GTI, because you actually get a limited slip differential in that car, and I wish all models in the 308 range got a limited slip differential, because it really does help around corners. These cars, or the regular petrol and diesel cars, don't. It does mean it's a bit more lively around corners. The seats are actually pretty snug. The side bolsters really do hug you around, and they are part leather seats as well, so they are up to scratch, pretty premium, and they haven't worn down, although I highly doubt it would wear down anyway. This car has only done 20,000 miles. This car is obviously turbocharged, and I could tell because every time you put it into manual mode and drop down the gears, put your foot down, there is that tiny bit of turbo lag. There are some cool features in the infotainment system which I haven't mentioned in the main bit of the video, and that is you actually get a calculator in this car. How bizarre. When are you going to need a calculator? You could just use your phone, but it's there anyway. Also, you can add transitions when you are moving from one screen to another. Not too sure why you would want transitions, but that feature's there for you anyway. I think it does make it slightly more laggier when you add that feature in. Although the steering wheel is quite small, I do like the design of it. It's got a nice perforated style and very light as well, especially when you put it into sport mode. So this car is actually pretty heavy compared to its competitors. It weighs around 1.6 tons or 1,600 kilograms, and that means it is 400 kilograms heavier than the Civic and 200 kilograms heavier than the i30, which is a great car. But it actually feels like a pretty brand new car. The ride heights, you would think it looks pretty high from the outside, but you don't sit up that high. It's not obnoxious, let's just say. And if you do drive it quite respectively and responsibly, you will be getting quite high MPG as well around town, probably 45 at best. If you are hammering the car, you probably are looking at something like 30 mpg, but 30 mpg is still great if you are hammering the car about. It means you can have a lot of fun with a lot of pennies to save. Sitting in the interior, it is pretty refined. You do also get these little seatbelt lights to show you which person is not buckled in. I think it's a great little feature. So the mirrors in this car as well, they are quite nice and big, and visibility is say a respectable amount. It's not great just on those on the rear pillars there, but you get a reversing camera, so it doesn't really matter that much. It's also a very spacious cabin in here. There's a lot of space. I think some models you can get it with a sunroof, a full panoramic sunroof, and I guess that would make it a little bit more spacious. If I was to ever go down the 308 route, my ultimate configuration would only be the 308 SW, and I think that's the estate version in the 1.6 litre GT variant that gives around 205 brake horsepower. That would be my ultimate 308 if I was to ever get a Peugeot. And I forgot to mention, the boot space in this car is the biggest in its class. But if you get in a hatchback, I'm sure it's not really a thing you look into, but it's there when you need it to be. So that's the in-depth tour of the Peugeot 308 GT line. Overall, this car is super elegant and refined. I'm just slightly disappointed by the performance with the regular petrol and diesel engines, as they aren't that exciting, although this 1.2 litre has kind of proved me wrong today. It is a slightly torquey, punchy engine, which is great. Anyway, I can't wait for the new 308 and what it can offer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.